Hi, and welcome to Kate Anjou's Book Reviews, the place where we shine a light on indie books and their authors. Today, I have the incredible J.N. Stein, author of the Stone Sister series, and lots of wonderful things within it. Thank you so much for coming on. How are you doing?
Hi, good evening. I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I am good, yeah. Very excited to discuss this book. The book we're discussing today is Choosing Fate. It's the third one of the Stone Sister series. So I would say that if you haven't read the other books, because we will probably touch on the other books, we just naturally, because it's a follow-on story. So I would say if you haven't read the other books, they are available on Amazon and KU. So pause, read them, come back. But the discussion of Choosing Fate will be spoiler free, so don't worry if you haven't got around to that one just yet, because it has only just been released. But yeah, so Choosing Fate, it follows Sapphire Stone of the Sisterhood, and also Asher, the leader of the Red Mountain Pack. And as I said, we've kind of been following Saf's story a little bit through the other books and the other sisters' POVs, and now we are finally getting a focus piece. So yeah, so normally what I do with these interviews is I ask my author just to let our listeners and watchers know a little bit about you, and then also just give like a brief kind of synopsis of the story.
Okay, yeah. So, hi everyone. My name is J.N. Stein, and I am a newer indie author where I focus on writing. My series is the Stone Sisters series, and it's got 3 completed books so far, starting with Fearing Fate, then Rejecting Fate, and now Choosing Fate is the most recent one. And look at those books highlighted in the background. For anybody listening only, there's the books highlighted in the background. And and the stories and the series follows 5 sisters who are werewolves, whose father was an alpha of a pack. But while they were young, and before the story even really starts, I tell the story of how there was a fated mate plague that killed off thousands and thousands of werewolves all over the world, because it basically kills any werewolf that has a fated mate and found their fated mate. And once it kills one werewolf in the mated pair, it is most likely going to kill the other mate in the pair, either through the plague itself or through the pain of loss and grief or whatnot. And so all over the world, werewolves are dying, and there's pandemonium and chaos. And so the Stone Sisters, their father, Alfred Bronson Stone, he had already lost his wife, the sister's mother, and he had made plans to, in an effort to protect his daughters, because he knew his death was imminent, he decided to send them off to different corners in the United States, because that's where they live. And they were going to be taken care of by different pack members that their father trusted. And they all spent their entire childhoods living apart from each other, growing up in different areas, but keeping in touch, because it takes place in modern times. And then once, about 12 years later, they finally make the decision to try and reunite in the first Sisters book, in Diamond's book. And my books all focus on strong female characters. It's paranormal. There's definitely some romance in it in terms of like steam and spice, but I really focus on the strength in the female leads, complex characters, a little bit of plot twists, emotional roller coasters. That's what I really try to focus on in my book. So if you were into those like general tropes, and then much more, and maybe a little bit of like some dark humor and some sarcastic humor, that's definitely in there a lot as well. So if that's what you're looking for, that's what you will find in my books.
No, that's a very good way of describing it. Yeah, emotional roller coaster. I'll tell you what, the voice notes that I've sent you, just like pure rage when things, I'm like, how could you? You know, I'm like crying here. You made me feel things. You know, so yeah, I would 100% agree with that description there for sure. So at the beginning of this book, Saf has dealt with a lot of grief. She suffered the loss of her chosen mate, Nathan, R.I.P. And she's not in the best. Is it fair to say that she's sort of in the anger part of the grieving process?
Yeah, I think it's safe to say she's somewhere in between like anger and denial at this point in her loss. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like with this story, I think this story deals with grief the most. It's not just her, there's other characters that have gone through that whole thing. And grief is a common theme with this book because of the fated plague, the fated mates plague, and just and having someone being like ripped from your life unexpectedly and something that you never thought would happen. So what, I guess, like, what was that like, right, like going into a book with a character that is in the middle of going through so much? And when we've met the other characters, they were kind of fairly fresh and they're kind of at the beginning of their story, whereas Saf's kind of like partway through her story already. What was that like for you?
Yeah, so I definitely wanted to use Saf's story as a way to highlight the complexities of loss and grief because, like you mentioned, Kate, the series deals with a lot of loss for a lot of characters because the prelude to the series is that there was a fated mate plague that killed so many werewolves all over the world, and so many people were dealing with the loss of loved ones and family members and friends. But there hasn't been a character yet that's been like the main focus of what the loss process has really felt like, or to follow a character as they really experience like death and grief firsthand. Like we get like some snippets of backstories, and I talk about other characters and their experiences, but they've more or less processed their loss and are on the other end of it at this point for the most part. And Saf is not.
No.
Saf is, and I really wanted to highlight the beauty of grief and that it's not pretty and that it's not just a simple like the person is gone. You have like it's been a few weeks, a few months, and you should be good now. Like loss is normal. Like why aren't you okay? And so yeah, I really just wanted to show the human aspect of loss and grief with Saf's book and really shine a light on the normalcy of there's no timeline for getting over a loss of somebody. So that's what my goal was for the book of Choosing Fate.
Yeah, no, definitely. So the first two books are pretty kind of light reading. They have their dark aspects, sure. But like in Choosing Fate, this new one, like we really do start to see like dark elements really coming through, more so than the others, like I would say. Like even as I said, like even our, female main character, like she has this very fresh trauma compared to the other female leads that we've met so far. Like they have, obviously they've suffered loss from like their family and things, been separated, but like generally like their lives have been pretty enriched. They've made their families within the packs that they were sent to, they've got friends, they are excelling, they have their own strengths, as you say. Like these characters, they're so strong, and there's usually like a bit of levity in those books, whereas this one, there's nothing like that. When we go straight into this character who is just so withdrawn, and as the story goes on, like we see, I'm not gonna like spoil it or anything, but like we do see that there is some very dark subject matter coming through in terms of like our villains and their agendas and their methods of achieving those agendas. And so is that the kind of like direction that we're going to see escalate through this series as it continues?
Yeah, so the series, so Fearing Fate, the first book, like you said, Kate, all the books have like darker themes and elements in them. So there are trigger warnings for all of my books. Or as I like to name it in my books, like reader, be mindful. There might be some moments throughout the books that you might not even be aware of could be triggering to you, and I just want you to enjoy the book. But there are darker themes within the book because life is dark, and I tried to write with a sense of realism as well. But definitely in Sapphire's book and Saf's book, I think I start with the dark themes pretty quickly because, like we're saying, her character is just freshly dealing with like the loss of a partner, and she hasn't found a way to cope with that loss yet, or not effectively. And her family, her sisters and friends also don't know how to help her because they haven't experienced loss in this way yet or at all. So they don't know how to help her. She doesn't know how to help herself. And I think she was the perfect character to do this with, because in the first two books, her character is the most optimistic, or one of the most optimistic and light and hopeful of the sisters. And then she just takes a sharp turn to dark town. And it was definitely, I don't want to say fun, but it was definitely an enjoyable experience to explore that mentality shift for her.
No, definitely. And I think, you know, as well, like, it's not just even a loss of a partner, but it's a loss of her best friend. They've been best friends since they were tiny, like, you know, since she first moved to the pack. And she's one of the youngest out of the sisters. So, you know, it's not just losing a partner, it's losing a best friend, it's losing a confidant, it's losing, you know, your constant. And within that as well, like, as a result, losing a part of yourself, as you say, she's such a sunny, vibrant character in these other books, and then suddenly there's no hope, there's no, you know, anything. And she basically says, like, I'm just not that person anymore. She's not coming back. I don't care about anything. I used to love gardening, I used to love this, and none of it means anything to me anymore, because what's the point? And I think that's the hardest thing for her sisters, is not only just knowing how to help someone who's grieving in such a way, but they are also suffering a loss of their sunny, vibrant sister, you know, who doesn't seem to be there anymore. And I think that grief is just such a complex emotion, and there's so many different aspects. That's why, you know, the 5 stages of grief, and it's, you know, it does look different for different people and different circumstances, sure, like, it's not just like a set thing. And that's, I think, is what makes it so hard, is that there's no set way of dealing with it. And I think you explore that so wonderfully here. Yeah, no, and I you know, I said to you off air, like, one of the things that really shines through for your books is, although it's set in this sort of like paranormal existence, like, it's in our world, but there's this sort of, you know, it's not our world, you know.
Yeah, it's a parallel universe within
the yeah, exactly. You know, kind of like True Blood's in our world, but it's not, you know. And it's, you know, they obviously dealing with things like werewolves and witches and all this kind of stuff that obviously doesn't exist in our world. But the core of the story is about very relatable things, and the darkness that comes from your books are things that happen in this world, and they are horrific things that happen in our world that we don't like to talk about, we don't like to think about. And so I think that, you know, the contrast within, you know, the kind of the levity that your books have as a general energy, it's such a juxtaposition when you're then forced to look into the horrors that, you know, people, whether or not they're human or vampire or werewolf or whatever, you know, that people can do to each other. And I think that that is paralleled in Saf's journey. This, you know, this very happy, life-loving person suddenly has no emotion about anything whatsoever, apart from deep, deep hurt. Yeah, I just think it's so wonderfully written. And then, you know, as she starts to come out, like, you know, again, I don't want to sort of say, but, you know, she doesn't just have this one, you know, it wouldn't be an interesting story if she was just this one, like, angry, frustrated, you know. And it's like, and it's like, again, I remember voice noting you and just being like, I really just don't like her. Am I supposed to, like, you know?
No, you're not supposed to like her. Her family didn't even like her at the beginning of the book, because they were at their wits' end with her either. So I cracked up when you sent me that voice note, because you were like, I really don't like Saf right now. And I said, good, you're not supposed to.
I was so relieved when you said that, because I was like, I love every single one of your characters, and they're all so different, but they're also lovable in their own way. And I was like, I'm not used to this. Yeah. Yeah. So we're gonna say,
I think that's I wanted to play around with that idea of like Saf being like repelling in her process of growth and grieving, because I think that's an aspect of grief that I haven't read a lot of in other books, that like when there's a loss, like, you know, people go through the 5 stages of grief pretty quickly in other books. And I really wanted to really show it and like paint that picture with Saf. And then it's not always perfectly linear. Sometimes you
No.
regress a little bit. It's somewhat cyclical at times. And there are times when like you're grieving and like you're angry, but you are really angry at like something that's not tangible. So the
Yeah.
only way to express your anger is that the people closest to you.
Yeah.
And you push them away because you don't know how to ask for help. You don't know how to express like why you're frustrated or why you're sad. And I think like I really tried to paint that picture with Saf. And so when you said that, I was like, oh, I did it. I did it. I made people so mad at her because that makes it harder to help the people who are hurting because you're like, they're being a total asshole right now.
Yeah.
They're being a total asshole right now. I don't want to help them. It's like, yeah, and that's what grief will do to people. It'll make you withdraw even more, and it'll cause people to pull away from you even more. And then it just confirms that you're in it alone.
Yeah. I think you do such a good job with that, and even when, as I say, she starts to kind of like come out and things, she, as you say, she has these moments where she feels extreme guilt, and then she kind of draws back, and it's as you say, it's not linear. Yeah, and this is a battle that she is constantly fighting. As you say, it's not just, you know, oh, I'm sad and now I'm happy. Throughout the whole book, she is battling with herself about what she wants, what she feels she should want, what she feels like she should feel even, and like, you know, and guilt for how she's treated people, guilt for, you know, the things that she's doing now. And it's, yeah, she's definitely had one of the most complex journeys of the sisters so far, and I think that's just like a real testament to your writing and your understanding of the human nature, for sure. No, yeah, no, definitely. So what I found is so prevalent in these books is like the idea of family, and like not just like blood relatives, but also this idea of chosen family. You know, we have chosen mates, you know, so there's fated mates, as you've mentioned, where it's like, so there's the moon goddess, who is essentially this all-powerful deity, and she is very much like, yeah, the idea of fate, and you're supposed to be with this person and everything. And I can't remember if you mentioned it, but like fated mates after the plague just never happened. Like it died out, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden fated mates start like slowly but surely kind of coming into play again, much to the confusion of everyone.
Right. Yeah. And it's a generation that's never seen fated mates, or at least barely remembers them. And so they don't know what to expect.
No, exactly. They've not had anyone to be able to really tell them what it feels like, what you to expect or anything, because it's been like 30 years between like the last one and the newest one. So what people have been doing is they've been choosing them. It's like, you know, you choose a partner in real life, you know, but like they mark each other, because the fated mates will bite each other's necks as like a claim, like, this is my partner.
Right.
Like polygamy is not really a thing in werewolves. So
but not in the books right now. Not in the books
right now. Oh, okay. But yeah, so, and then you know, so you have your chosen mates, so they still mark each other, but it's not in the same way. But like, you know, it doesn't mean that their love is any less genuine. And that's what Nathan and Sapphire were like. They were each other's chosen mates. So you have this idea of people who you choose to bring in your life. Then obviously you had the sisters who were separated when they were very young, and they all had to make new bonds in their packs. And you have like characters like Dyer and Sage, and things. And but then you also very much have, you know, this sisterhood. You've got brothers and sisters, you've got like, you know, family of like alphas and things. So there's a lot of different types of family in this book. And you know, I feel like a lot of them, especially because we focus around these 5 sisters, a lot of them are very kind of like female presenting relationships, you know, like we do have the fated mates and the chosen mates and things as well, which so for the, I think so far have been heterosexual. But we have, you know, sorry,
not long. Little teaser. Future books and stories will have some other types of non-heterosexual relationships.
Okay, I look forward to it. But yeah, so like you have you know, you have this idea of like sisterhood and sisterhood between friends as well, and things. So like, I guess just like how important is that representation to you, and like, and why did you decide to make that such a theme, you know?
Yeah. Oh, I love this question. So, one of the first things that I think people learn when it comes to writing is you write what you know. And um, I have four sisters in real life. So the Five Stone sisters are very loosely based on my four sisters and myself. And that was probably the easiest thing for me to start writing, is like the relationship and the dynamics of a lot of sisters and the different types of personalities that exist between many siblings. And then honestly, as I started writing the first book, I just realized like a sub theme for me, or a subplot, maybe it's even a trope in itself, is just I feel like a lot of werewolf and paranormal books focus on the fated mate bond. And I really wanted to focus on family bonds because I feel like that's just as important. And I didn't want these characters to only be defined by their quest for love, because up until like later in the first book, none of them really thought or believed that there would be fated mates ever again. So they had to rely on the strength of their friendships or their found families and whatever family bonds that they had left that survived the plague. So a lot of sub themes that are woven into my books are these different relationships that people have, and the strength and the interactions between these different characters and their siblings and their friends. And I think that's also what helps people fall in love with these characters. It's not just like they're, oh my god, they're just like, I want them to find love. It's like, I want them to make up with their sister. I want them to have a better relationship with their brother or their friend. And that's what I hope people are also rooting for.
Yeah, I definitely am when I'm reading it. Like, you know, every single relationship is important to me when I read these books. And I think it's great that you don't just focus on like the romantic aspect. These characters are not defined by one thing, you know. And just gonna hark back to Rejecting Fate, is one that like I really related to, and we've spoken about it. And it isn't really a spoiler or anything, but Emmy, the sister that we're focusing on that book, you know, she has a lot of body image issues. She isn't very confident. She isn't a very sociable person. She doesn't really know how to deal with people in a way. Like, she's just very kind of insular. Like, she knows her strengths. She's very, very smart. She's strategic, you know, and she has these goals and these ambitions, that are away from the pack, away from this werewolf life, and, you know, trying to find her place within that. And she keeps getting kind of like clawed back into what happens. And, you know, and then she suddenly finds these emotions for, you know, one of the other characters, but her insecurities kind of like draw her back. And not just because of her body image, but she's had, you know, awful things happen to her in the past. And, you know, you could have so easily made it about one thing or another, but like all of your characters, she's so multifaceted. And, you know, I think is a very easy thing to do, especially like within romantasy, you know, because people do love romance, people do love smart and want to, you know, just get lost in the kind of oof of it all.
Of
But
course.
and that's great, like,
Yeah.
I mean, if that's all you're looking for, then fine. That's not me snubbing, but for me, and I think a lot of readers, it's not enough, you know. You like, I get very frustrated with books when there's just tons of sex thrown in and there's no character plot, like no character arc or no plot or anything that makes that character unique.
Yeah.
And so while you do have a lot of romance, and there is definitely some sauce going on up in that mix, for sure. Like,
Trash.
But that is like by far not the only thing going on with these characters or in the book. There is way more things going on that are at stake, and that is absolutely true. In fact, I think that Choosing Fate probably has the least amount of smut and romance in it, because we're in the third book now. You know, this is really driving, and we kind of came to an end of a chapter, no pun intended. At the end of Choosing Fate, there was like, you know, things that happened where it kind of like we said goodbye to some characters, some things happened, which kind of sort of, you know, ended that particular narrative. But then there's these offshoots of other narratives that come into Choosing Fate.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry, no, Rejecting Fate is when that happens. Sorry,
Yes.
And the titles mixed up, sorry. Yeah, so Rejecting Fate, we've said goodbye to some stuff and there's some things being closed off, but in Choosing Fate there's some offshoots from what's happened in the previous books that really come into play here. And it goes down, as I say, it goes down this very kind of like dark narrative, and that's like very much the focus. And things like forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Forgiveness is also a really big theme in this book.
It is, yeah. And I'm actually, yeah, so if you were looking for a fast burn, Choosing Fate is not a fast burn. You really have to earn the spice.
Yes.
But I was pretty intentional about that, because there were definitely parts when I was drafting this book where I was like, I could probably put in a little bit more spice earlier in the book. I could turn this scene up a little bit more. But I'm also, not that I'm not a fan, but I didn't think it would be realistic for Saf's journey to cope with her grief through sex.
Yeah.
I don't think it would have been realistic and believable for her character to do that. I toyed with the idea, and then as I kept developing her character and writing the book, I'm like, her coping with sex just doesn't fit her character's story. And so you have to wait. She waits, her partner waits, like everybody waits. But I feel like when the spice hits, it hits.
Yeah.
So if you're willing to wait, it's great.
Yeah. I mean, who doesn't love delayed gratification, right?
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think that that's absolutely right. I think that it would have been wrong for Saf to deal with it in that way. That's, you know, it is how some people deal with stuff,
Sure.
but that's not Saf's character. And as well, Saf has been with one person, like her whole life. She's not the kind of person to just hook up or whatever. Like she really has intimacy with that, as it's not frivolous for her. It's, you know, it's more than just about getting a happy, you know, and she has to really connect. And she and the complexity of her grief, I just don't think she would, it wouldn't be, if she did it earlier, unless you were just going to completely like lose sight of who she is at her core, it wouldn't be an enjoyable thing. And it would ruin, there's no way that she could come back from that, I don't think, and we wouldn't be given the reward of what happens down the end, you know?
Right. Yeah. Again, like, could it have been possible for her character to like have sex with somebody, or like her or Asher, like earlier in the book? Absolutely. But I also don't think Asher's character, if that was what I was going to write, Asher's character probably wouldn't have allowed it based on like how he is, and so that would mean Saf would have to have like been promiscuous with somebody else. And like, I thought about it, I considered it as a plot point originally when I was drafting the book. Like, Saf maybe becomes a little promiscuous because that would be a 180 from her character. But it just didn't feel genuine to her character's arc and her storyline. So I left that out. So yeah, I'm very happy with what her character does throughout the book and how it ends. I'm happy.
Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right. And like, as well, like, you're right about Asher. He's a very he's got a lot of integrity. He's a very respectful person. He's also very disciplined, and you know, we see that in lots of different ways. So, you know, it would be out of his character as well. And I also as well would think that it would make him dislikable, like, or unlikable rather, because it would be taking advantage, and it would be very kind of dubious and not in a fun, ooh, you know, dubcon kind of way that you get in like romance, dark romance and things, but just like, it would actually just not be ethical. And we would find it, I mean, I know I would find it very difficult to get back on his side if that happened. And actually, this is a thing as well that like I wanted to talk to you about, because the whole idea of fated mates is kind of, it in itself is almost a bit dubious, because it's like, would you get with these people, would you fall in love with these people if it wasn't for this like pull that essentially comes from their inner wolves that, you know, is out of their control almost. And you find, as the book goes on, there are like characters that they would never dream of getting with each other, and that in itself is a journey. And I wanted to get your sort of thoughts on that, because that's something that is brought up in this book. And I was actually really kind of like grateful for it, because as much as I can kind of like, well, it's just, you know, there are, you know, it was kind of in the back of my mind of like, how like this kind of like idea of fated mates is very romantic, but like the kind of core of it is like, it kind of, you lose your, it's almost like you lose your consent, because you can't overcome this drive. And if you try to, then the alternative is essentially death, you know. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that was so what got me into as a reader of paranormal romance was, before I read any of these books, like I didn't even know anything about werewolves or whatnot. I think I maybe watched one of the Twilight movies, and I never read any of the books. Nothing against it. It just, at the time, it didn't click with me. So I didn't really know anything about the world.
I can send you over a bunch.
Dive as a reader. And I just I fell in love with the idea of like these fated mates. And I love that concept, because I think I am like a romantic at heart. And I do love the idea of like a soulmate. But I also like the idea of you choose your soulmate. Like, love isn't just something that happens organically all the time. It's something that you constantly work at, and you choose to love a person every day, even if you don't like them. Like, I feel like that's the core of like truly loving someone. And so this idea of like in werewolf lore, or at least in a lot of paranormal romance, is like, yeah, there's fated mates, and like you just feel this strong magnetic pull, and you're just supposed to immediately feel love. And I really try hard to write in my books that like the characters don't feel love. They definitely feel the pull and that connection from like an internal level, but mentally they don't know the person. They don't know, they might not even like the person. And so I really try and shed light, especially in Saf's book, is like, she definitely feels some type of pull. Asher definitely feels some type of pull, but they're still negotiating their individual feelings for one another. And they both end up having to make a choice. Like, even if we're deemed to be a good match, do we agree that we're a good match, and that we complement each other, and that we can be good for each other? And I love the idea of like, even though it might be fate, you still have a choice at the end of the day. And I really wanted to highlight that, not just in Saf's book. It's definitely highlighted in Saf's book, but in all the sisters' books, it's definitely highlighted.
Because I think even from the first go as well, like, you know, Daya's terrified of the plague and things, so she really fights her connection with Darius. And I think as well, like in real life, like you can be sexually attracted to someone who you can despise, kind of thing. You know, and it's almost like hate sex, you know, which personally I don't understand. If I don't like someone, there's absolutely no way they're getting within an inch of me. But I know that that's a thing for some people. So it's like, you know, it does happen. And I just, I just wanted to ask you about it, because I thought that was like an interesting sort of concept of this idea that kind of like, you know, the connection that you feel is kind of out of your hands, but then as you say, it is so much more complex than that. It's not just like, oh, a switch gets turned on and now I think you're awesome. And it's not, and even within this book, it's not even just Saf and Asher. There's other ones going up, and I won't say, but there was one I was just like, is kind of hinted at before it's truly revealed, and I was like, and I messaged you about it. I was like, is that oh my God, like that is so messy, you know, like it's so messy. I mean,
but it makes sense by the end of the book. It makes sense.
Sense. Oh yeah, and like, and it's, you know, it all kind of like pans out, but it's just kind of like, when I read it, I was just like, oh, popcorn, like I just like seeing how this is unfolding, because it's not even just these two characters, it's like all the people around them and like what their reactions are going to be. And oh my God, yeah, it was quite a trip. But yeah, no, cool. Thank you for answering that, because I know it's a difficult question, but like I did want to just sort of like put that forward. Speaking of like relationships, and you know, you touched on family, we have a new family dynamic in this book as well. We have a parent
Yes.
We've never had that before in these books. And not only is it a parent, it's a single father and a daughter. And I love Ruby.
Right.
She's a firecracker. And you know, she's a very little girl. She's 4. She is every bit 4 and then some. You know, if anyone has a daughter who's around that age, you'll know. But like it's such a beautiful dynamic and relationship that they have, and it's just their own little world. And I wondered, you know, because you don't have kids, and even if you did have kids, you're not a dad. You can't, you know. And I wondered sort of what was that like, writing those kind of characters? Like, did you come across any challenges? How did you deal with that?
Yeah. So yeah, I don't have kids. I have dogs. That's not the same. And I'm not a father, and I don't have intentions of becoming a parent either. But I honestly, it was kind of like, I mean, I've read other books that have single dads or single parents in them, so it's not an uncommon like theme to read or plot to read. But I was actually the interactions between Asher and Ruby as father and daughter. I was trying to write them as like, if I was Ruby, what kind of relationship would I want to have like with my dad? And I had a pretty strong relationship with my dad growing up. And so I tried pulling from that. And I also wanted to give like a very young child, like a strong voice too, and to show that like this dad was empowering his daughter to have like a strong will and a strong voice as well.
Yeah.
So, and I wanted it to be a fun relationship too. Like I wanted him to be like an equally strong and sensitive dad, and
Yeah.
not just like a tough love type dad, just a very like sincere and like genuinely loving father. And she's like a genuinely like adorable kid.
Yeah.
So it was hard like to put it shortly, it was difficult because I didn't know if I was capturing the dynamic well. So I'm glad you thought I did, and other readers who've read the book so far have also like felt the connection between them, so yay.
It's truly magical. And I mean that even that relationship doesn't come without its problems. You know, they go through it too. But like it's just so wonderful, like bookies and cookies. It's
That's gotta be like, I gotta hashtag that or something, because so many people are like, I gotta start doing that.
I do that with my little girl. And yeah, I mean, like, you know, not to go too personal, but like me and my kid's dad a split. Like he's not, like Asher unfortunately was widowed, but yeah, like but he's so involved, and like it's very even keel, like there's no you know, animosity or anything, and like he is such a hands-on dad, like she is his world kind of thing. And I really saw that sort of thing in Ruby and Asher, and just them having their own little things going on, and it was just such a beautiful like relationship to see. And you know, because you know, especially like with this book dealing with a lot of darkness, having those moments of joy and innocence, it was definitely like a really kind of like bit of like you could breathe, you know.
Yeah, and like coming back to what we were talking about earlier, again, a big like goal for me in these books is to touch on the power of like family bonds and family dynamics. So how can you talk about it without talking about the parent-child bond? And so this was my opportunity to start him to like play with that relationship and that dynamic too. And it was a lot of fun. Ruby was so much fun to write.
She's so funny. She takes no shit, like at all. And yeah, she forgets nothing. And like yeah, and she is authentic for a kid that age. I mean, she's definitely precocious, but I would also argue that, you know, I mean, for example, you know, their pregnancies are a lot shorter, you know, so it makes sense that their growth patterns are quicker a little bit as well. And I mean, if you really want to get technical with it, wolves and dogs have a much shorter lifespan than humans.
Yeah.
It doesn't translate like that with our characters or anything, but it makes sense that she is she is precocious, that she is kind of wise beyond her years.
Yeah.
Especially with a dad like Asher, who, as you say, he's so uplifting, he's so empowering.
Mhm.
He doesn't bullshit her. He doesn't, I mean, he protects her, and he doesn't, he doesn't expose her to things unnecessarily, but he certainly doesn't try to pull any punches with her, and she sure as hell wouldn't let him,
Yeah.
and it's so lush. And I think as well, because we've met a lot of alphas.
Mhm.
They have to be, they're tough. They have to kind of rule a little bit with an iron fist. Like, they're not they're not dictators or anything like that. They're not cruel or unfair, but like,
They're stern.
they're stern. They have to be. And so this is kind of like the first time that we've seen an alpha show a softer side when it's not been about their partner,
Yeah.
And there are so many different things about Asher that set him apart from the other alphas, and it's all kind of revealed as to why in this book through Ruby and his relationship with Ruby. And as I said, yes, it's truly magical. It's lovely, and I can't wait to see what else happens with Ruby and her dad and things. I know I'm gonna have to probably wait a bit because we're now on like a different sister's story, but
Yeah, I'm already contemplating a Ruby spinoff. I'm contemplating it. I mean, like, how can you have a Stone Sisters series and then introduce a character named Ruby and not, right?
Well said to you, right? Like, because all the sisters, we haven't said this, but all the sisters are named after precious gems. You've got emerald, diamond, sapphire, amethyst, and pearl, right?
Mhm.
And I was like, and you don't do anything by accident.
I don't know.
There's nothing that's by accident, and like, it didn't take me very long to clock that either. So I was like, Ruby, that's a thing. You did that on purpose. What is this? And I still haven't worked it out. I'm still like, churning it through my mind, but I'm like, okay.
Yeah. So it's nothing's like drafted, or I don't even have a note down, but in the back of my mind, I have ideas churning for her, and I'm like, I mean, she's got to have a story, so
Yeah.
it'll happen eventually.
Yeah, no, she's great. And for anyone who's just like, oh, I don't want to read about kids, trust, this kid is, she's someone else, I tell you. She's fucking great.
Yeah. I think it's because Ruby that Saf's also able to pull herself out of her grief. I think if it was just Asher, maybe, but I think because it's Asher and Ruby, their relationship and the two of them together really makes a difference for Saf in her journey. So
yeah, because I think that Ruby allows her to tap back into that joy without it being something that she feels like she has to do to make others happy. And then she also sees Asher in a completely different light to what she's had this perception of him. And it's an unfair perception because she really doesn't know the guy at all. And she's just, hurting and lashing out and wanting someone to blame. But, there's just no way that any woman, or at least any straight woman, isn't going to fall in love with this big tattered, like muscly brute of a guy who is like reading bedtime stories and having cookies with his 4-year-old girl. Like, I'm sorry, but I don't care how hard you think you are. I don't care how sad. There is not one woman on this fucking earth who's into men who isn't just going to be like, yeah, okay, about it.
Pink hair.
Yeah, he's got pink hair and he has cupcake tattoos. I mean, what's not to love?
Yeah, I so wanted to, and that was something else. I had so much fun playing around with Asher's character because, like you said, he's not like any other alpha. He's definitely tough, and he's like, he could be brutish if he needs to be. But but his character is more like, I mean, the main trope within Saf and Asher's story is like grumpy meets sunshine, and Saf is the grumpy and Ash is the sunshine. So he's like the more lighthearted, like sees the forest through the trees and sees the glass half full, and Sapphire's just like, everything sucks, I hate everything, and Ash is like, it's gonna be okay. And so he's got that mentality, but he's also, I relived my punk rock days through Asher's character also, because I'm like I'm a grown up like punk rock emo kid, And I haven't really seen a lot of that in books either. Like I've seen plenty of like alphas with lots of tattoos, and they're great. I like love it. But I really wanted to play around with like I want a punk rock alpha. Like I want somebody who's like into music, is like a little bit grunge,
Yeah.
like dyes his hair, has piercings, is alternative, and is also like a little bit more merciful compared to other alphas, and
Yeah.
has a little bit more of like a forgiveness, errs on the side of forgiveness and second chances.
He's a very empathetic character. He's a
Yeah.
very he has a hardness at his core, which is, I think, comes from being an alpha, and it's a necessity if you want to do that job well. But he doesn't let it overrule his overall decision process. And I mean, he's my favorite alpha so far. Like, don't get me wrong, I love them all, but like, he's definitely like one, like he's the person who I could imagine being mates with. Like, not mates, but like friends with. No, although I wouldn't say no, but yeah. But like, you could like sit back, chill out in his office, put some music on, talk about how, music's not like how it used to be back in the day, and just, and like have a really good time with it. And like,
and then he'll play his guitar for you.
Yeah, right. My guitar. And yeah, like he does have this playfulness to him, and this lightness to him, which I think is so important. And I think as well it's so important to him being a parent, because you don't want to bring that home to your family, you don't want to bring home that trauma and stress. And he's had a lot. And Ruby, she's had to grow up without a mother, and there's enough in their lives without adding more. And I think that if you had a character like Vinny or Darius, for example, who is a little bit takes themselves a little bit more seriously, it just wouldn't have that same dynamic. And as you said, I don't think Saf would get to where she ends up necessarily, or like definitely not, and I don't want to even say as quick, because it's definitely not a quick journey, but like it would have taken even longer for her to get to that point, if she ever did.
Right.
And I
would fall for an asshole. Like that's the thing. Like Darius in book one, I wouldn't say he's like the asshole alpha, but he's like, I call him like the blue collar alpha, where he's a little bit more like rough around the edges. He's a little bit more like laid back, but definitely still like, like punch first, ask questions later type guy. And then Vincenzo is like very intelligent, but takes himself very seriously and very like, like Saf wouldn't, like, she respects that, but she wouldn't be attracted to that. Like she needs somebody who's a little bit more open with how they feel. And that's Asher, because Saf, that's what she originally had with her chosen mate. And she lost that ability after he died. So she needs somebody to help her rediscover that part of herself. And that was Asher.
Yeah, definitely. And because, he's gone through his own loss for his chosen, they have that in common. They really, I mean, this is the thing with the Moon Goddess, like she knows what she's doing, because they really are just perfect for each other. They slot in each other. I was going to say they slot in each other's holes. That's not. They fill each other's gaps. Like there's no way of saying this is that. Like, but they
complete each other.
Yeah, the yin to the yang kind of thing. And you mentioned about the grumpy versus sunshine thing, and it's so often it's the girl who's like the sunshine and happy-go-lucky kind of thing, and then the guy's all gruff, and like it's a very interesting flip of that dynamic, whereas she's the grumpy one and he's the puppy. He's such a puppy.
A little bit.
He's such a puppy.
A little bit. Yeah. And I think that comes back to like my theme of like, I focus on strong female characters. So I want my female characters, the leads especially, to be the more complex of the pair. So if Saf stayed the sunshine, I don't want to say you can't be complex and be the sunshine, but I think it just adds that little twist to her character's journey to make her the grumpy. So yeah.
No, definitely. So side characters.
Yes.
So, this book and this series has some wonderful side characters. I mean, the world building here is fantastic. And each book has, brings us a new pack along with it, new characters. There's so much opportunity to be playful. We also have new antagonists coming into this one, and they're, God, Jesus Christ, even more sadistic than what we're used to. I mean, that's saying something as well, you know. We're also as well, we're meeting people from outside of the States. Like, we've met Vincenzo and his sister, who originate from Italy, but like, we've got an entire pack here who are Australian, you know, and that's so far from, you know, anything that we've met before. They have a completely different outlook, a completely different way of being. And yeah, I guess just like, first of all, I want to ask, like, what is it like to write characters that are just from somewhere completely different? Like, and yeah, I think you are quite a well-traveled person, but just to kind of get in the mindset of someone who has a completely different culture to yours.
Yeah, I'm not as traveled as I'd like to be, but I do try to do my research, and like, so I stuck in my comfort zone with the first book, and I kept it set in America, and all the characters are from like the Northeast and stuff, because that's where I'm from. I'm from the Northeast in the United States, so it was a little. I was like, right, let me just stay like in my comfort zone for this first book, and then I'll branch out. And then the second book, yeah, let's bring in a pack from Italy. I've never been to Italy, but you know, there's the internet, and I did some reading and I did some research, and then I also like asked people I know who've been to that part of the world or from that part of the world, like for their input when I'm like creating the characters. And honestly, I took a lot of inspiration from things that I just see online. So one of like Vincenzo's like character traits is he oftentimes will like confuse like American expressions, or he won't say them quite right. And
So,
there's a very I've seen like so many like Instagram posts and reels of like people who have international like partners from a different country, and they like give them like a common American expression, and then their partner's like, I don't know what that means, and because it just gets lost in translation. So I try to do those things. And then
yeah.
with Asher and his pack, like I've never been to Australia, met a couple people from that region. So I definitely will say, like, any readers that are from Australia, that region, please let me know if I did my if I did my characters right. And I really just wanted the readers that when they're reading the characters from different countries to hear that they're from somewhere different, and not because I know when I read, even if you tell me that a character's from a different country, egotistical perhaps, I just still read the character in my own
voice
head.
is your accent you have, isn't it? But I like to do this is so embarrassing, I shouldn't have said this, but I've started now. So I do a thing where like, and it's just being by myself, so like it's probably awful, but I'll read aloud the dialect, or the dialogue rather, in that dialect. So I'll like, I mean, I won't do it because it's first person narrative, so I don't read the whole book aloud, but like when they're talking, I'll like, you know, I'll do that kind of thing sometimes, and that helps with me as well, because you can really kind of like sound it out. And I have this dumb thing, so I've got ADHD, and I have this really annoying thing of just imitating accents when I'm surrounded by it too much.
Yeah,
do you do that, right?
I do that too. I do too, and I try really hard not to. Like, you're speaking with a British accent, and I'm just like, I have a ticker tape in the back of my head right now being like, don't say okay.
You sound like you're from London.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, like, and I was obsessed. I mean, I still listen to it now, but I heavily listened to this Australian podcast last year for a while, and I was just, I mean, I still say no. Oh no. Like,
Okay, yeah.
and I don't even realize that I do it. And for a while, see that go for a while, last year I had people, like, if I met someone new, they'd be like, oh, are you from Australia? Or like, oh, have you just come back from Australia? And I'm like, no, I'm just a fucking idiot who listens to too much podcasts, basically, like, and just imitates accents and stuff. So I kind of can do some, they're not always good, but like, if I concentrate in whatever, I can do accents. So like, I'm sitting there going just like, oh, like, you know, whatever, and things. So I kind of like tried that, and it was made, my point is, it was made a lot easier because the writing was, you know, in that dialect, and yeah, and I'm excited because I know that I'm not going to say anything, but I know that there are other countries coming into play in your future work. So I'm very excited to see more of that.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Book 4, we're going to introduce characters from a variety of different backgrounds, and again, that's also something I'm trying to be, not trying to be mindful of, but I wanted to do throughout the series is like show like diverse characters with unique backgrounds, different stories, different voices, because I want more readers to be able to find characters that they can identify with, that they can relate to. And so I'm really hoping that as the series builds, that that's being accomplished as well.
Yeah, I love that. I think that is so important. And I think, you know, because write is write what you know, and you know, you were very much a writer. I mean, like, the more I've gotten to know you, the more I can see just how much of yourself and your lifestyle that you've put into these books. And I think it's very easy though to kind of stay within a certain what's the word, demographic. And I think it takes a very brave writer to sort of stretch themselves outside of that. And, you know, I mean, there are writers who have been going on for years and years and years, and, you know, are very, very well established and still don't do that. And anytime they try, they don't do a very good job of it, you know, and it's kind of a bit awkward. You know, so I think that, like, you know, I think it's great, you know, that you pull from people genuine of those genuine like ethnicities and cultural backgrounds and things as much as you can, and you research, and you know, you do all these things, and you don't just go off kind of like stereotypes, and you don't just go off, you know, things you've seen in films or whatever.
I try to approach my books with a certain level of like cultural competency and respect for other cultures, because I don't know what I don't know. So I do try to, you know, at first do no harm. I always try to like not make fun of any cultures or anything like that. And if that's going to happen in my books, it's done through a character, not necessarily from an author perspective. It's done.
No. And I think that, but I also think that that's perfectly okay, because unfortunately there are prejudices there's prejudice in the world. And I think that it's just as much of a story as anything else, is to reflect the prejudice that comes with having certain, you know, backgrounds and things. And, you know, as long as it's not any of my girls doing it, you know, like, fine. Like, you know, if it's some asshole fucking villain, then like, all right, fine, I'm supposed to hate you, you're supposed to be a fucking dickhead. So, you know, that's fine. And again, like, it's, you know, if you're going to be looking into different cultures and different backgrounds, there are going to be struggles in that, you know, if it's natural for the story and for characters to broach those things, then don't shy away from that either, because those things happen, and it's unfortunate and horrible, but it's genuine. It's genuine storytelling. So with character, like, so on the subject of side characters and things, like, we do have like quite a plethora. We have like these whole packs and things, and, you know, as much as I love the five sisters and I love their mates and things, like, these side characters are so juicy. And I think that's quite a common thing, isn't it? Because they don't necessarily have, like, we don't necessarily focus on like their trauma and stuff as much. And I'm definitely not saying that they don't have trauma, because you have to put your characters through it. You do. You are that writer that just makes you just want to hurl a fucking book, because you're just like, in the best way,
of course,
in the best way, but I'm just
like, and then you'll pick it right back up.
100%. But yeah, like, I just but they're also diverse. You know, you've got like really strong you know, fighters, you've got you know, cocky kind of sidekick characters, you've got very sweet, sincere characters. Without, I mean, there's so many, like, it's very difficult to kind of like go into it in a non-spoilery interview kind of way, but just a very kind of straightforward question: who is your favorite side character, and are there ones that have either surprised you or challenged you particularly?
Ooh, okay, so that's a good question. And I think a few people have asked me this, and I don't want to say like I don't have a favorite. I think I can go by book. Who's my favorite by book? Yeah, I think for readers in book 1, Sage is definitely like a favorite side character who almost becomes main character, and will become main character in her own story. But I think for me, one of my favorite side characters in book 1 is Leslie Emberton.
Oh yeah, she's great.
She was one of my favorite side characters. She snuck up on me. I wasn't expecting to give her as much stage time in the sense, but her character, just as I wrote her character, I was like, oh, she's actually, there's a lot more I could do with her character. And so I really love her character, and you see a lot more of her character in book 4. So you'll see a lot more of her in book 4, which I'm really excited for. And then in book 2, I really enjoyed Renz. I know he wasn't a fan favorite, but I loved his character because he truly was like the Phantom, like just very misunderstood. I think everybody perceived him as the villain since the very beginning. And I really wanted to play around with this idea of like, you know, we misunderstand people so much to the point where we don't even want to give them a chance to get to know them based on their first impressions. And some people are just horrible at first impressions and second impressions. Like, you have to really try to get to know them. And so Renz was, I think, one of my favorite side characters from book 2. And then in book 3, I think I'm gonna make myself cry. I really love Syl. I did. I really love Syl in book 3. She is such a great character, and I think it would be hard for many people who read book 3 to not love Syl. And her character, just I love Syl.
Yeah, I love Syl. Love Syl. Yeah, she's great. She really is great.
So in the 3rd book, I would have to say my favorite character is it's Syl, hands down. Yeah, her character, I don't feel like, again, there are certain characters where I don't think they get, like, I say screen time, maybe I should say like page time or page time.
Yeah.
I'd say like Syl doesn't get like the most page time out of every side character or every character, but it's like the what she accomplishes in her brief snippets is it just makes her such a wonderful character, and she's a character that you're meant to love. So it's hard not to.
Yeah, no, you absolutely do love her, and and again, she's another part of Saf's sort of recovery, and she's so integral to that. And do you know, it's kind of funny because she's almost the sunshine that Saf is missing, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, like she's very optimistic, she's very happy, she doesn't push Saf to be any type of way. She's just like, all right, we're doing all right, that's what you're feeling today, that's what you're feeling today, that's all right, we'll do this instead, you know, kind of thing. And yeah, like she's a really lovely character. And you know, for anyone who's watching or listening who hasn't read this book yet, who's going to, like, I really can't wait for my audience to get to know her, because yeah, she is really wonderful. And yeah, she's not in it loads, but as you say, when she is in it, like they're very special moments.
Yeah, and I think Syl's just got like that genuine authenticity. Like, she's so willing to be forthcoming and just share about herself. Like, she definitely reveals in the book that she doesn't have like a lot of friends, but she is eager to connect with people. And she and Saf have like a pretty quick connection. And to the point you made, I think Saf definitely sees the light in Syl that Saf once lost, or that she had. And yeah, and Syl is definitely integral to Saf's recovery. And it's just, I love their friendship. I loved writing their scenes together. They were fun. They were so fun. Syl is really like what Saf needed to make like a big leap at certain points in the book.
Yeah, I think so. And I think as well, it's very easy because Syl is obviously not in that situation. So for Saf, she doesn't have any association, like Syl doesn't associate with any of her pain. And so Saf is in a very kind of unique position where she can pose opinions and questions to her without it being deemed as confrontational or, you know, anything like that. And only someone of her disposition and her position like could do that. So yeah, as I say, she's very integral, and in so many other ways as well, so to this book. So Yeah, love Still. It's really great. My personal favorite, as you know, is Aurelian.
Oh, yeah. He was a sneaky side character. So many people love Aurelian, and I was not expecting that. My gosh.
Yeah, so I won't say, because it does allude to a big spoiler, but for people who have read the book, people who haven't read the book, just wait. Is all I'm saying.
Read it so that you can know.
Oh yeah. Anytime he's on page, I get like excited. I get so excited. I'm just like,
He's such a wild card. He surprises me so much when I write him, because I really his character popped out to me. I wasn't necessarily I didn't know how I'd write his character when I had the idea for his character. And then I started writing him and I was like, okay, let's see where this goes. And I really didn't think readers would like him.
Oh no, he's great.
Readers would like him as much as they do, but every time somebody finishes reading book 1, Fearing Fate, because that's when he's introduced, they're all like, I love Aurelian. And I'm like, really? Okay. And then book 2, they're like, you brought Aurelian back. And I'm like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So
I think the way that I don't want to say too much. His character,
yeah.
I don't think we've ever seen before.
Okay.
Within werewolf like content.
Sure.
Like I can't say to know every single book or film or anything of ever of werewolves, but from what I have read and seen, I've never seen his character before specifically, and I think it's so interesting, and he's just so interesting as a character, and he's so fun. He's not fun, but his character, like, it's fun reading him is what I mean.
He doesn't quite fit in. He doesn't quite fit in, and he knows it, but he's not trying to either.
No, he's not. He's really not.
Yeah, he's very unapologetic for how he is. And I think like seeing the dynamic between him and Tobias,
Oh my God, it's so good.
like in like later books, is just like, that's very funny. Like I really leaned into their dynamic, and it's just so fun to write their scenes together.
I love it so much. Oh my God. Okay, I'm not going to say anymore because I don't want to spoil anything, but I just...
If you're on the fence about reading this series, at the very minimum, read it for Aurelian. Honestly, Team Aurelian.
Yeah.
Swag with that now.
A t-shirt with that on. Work on it. So, what am I... Okay, cool. So those are all like the big questions. I have some like fun trivial questions.
Ooh, yes.
Sort of, like sort of quickish answers. So
okay, quick. Got it.
Well, it doesn't have to be quick, but like they're not
when I put my mind to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm never concise for anything. I don't know if you picked that, so. Okay, first question.
Yes.
Most important. Out of all the questions I've asked tonight, this is the most important one. You ready?
Yes.
Which character do you fancy the most?
Ooh, do I fancy the most? I think Dr. Richard Santos.
He is a dark horse.
He is a dark horse.
Do you know who I envision? Do you know who I envision when I read him? I envision Hugh Dancy, who played Will in the Hannibal series.
Oh, yeah. It's pretty close.
That's who I imagine, like the kind of like geek chic, kind of like scruffy, exactly. Kind of like a Dr. Reed, like a Matthew Gray Goobler, Dr. Reed, Criminal Minds, kind of like the later seasons. Criminal Minds, not the early ones, but the later seasons, like that kind of vibe. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Anyways. Yeah. Okay, so if you could be a witch, vampire, or werewolf, what would you be?
Oh gosh, I think I'd be a werewolf. Yeah, I'm not even like I mean, my favorite animal is a penguin, but there's no were-penguins, and I don't think that'd be very cool. But werewolf for sure. Werewolf for sure. I like the idea of becoming a wolf. Yeah.
I just had this image of like the penguins and just like people just transfer, like transformations of wolves in films are always really dramatic, and it's like teeth, and it's just been like
yeah, it's like the most awkward transition. It's like, hold on, I'm coming. And it's like they waddle slowly. Like that wouldn't be a good book.
I get you. Coming, I get you.
That wouldn't be a good book. We got to get these leopard seals. Like, I don't know.
Oh, that's so funny.
I would definitely, I think I'd be a werewolf.
Okay, cool,
Yeah.
cool. Which character, I think I already know the answer to this, but for our audience purposes, which character do you relate to the most?
So I'm an Amy. So of the Stone sisters, like I mentioned before, they're very loosely based off myself and my real life sisters. And Amy's character is most closely based off of me. So she's the fourth daughter in the birth order. I'm number 4 out of 5 between my sisters and I. She takes on a lot of my actual physical characteristics in real life. And then I think like her snarky sense of humor is pretty close to what mine is. So like the things that Amy says in the books, those are things that I've either really said or could see myself saying to people. So yeah, I'm Amy, and maybe a sprinkle of Sage, a little bit.
Nice. Yeah, I think I relate to Amy the most. Like I'm the same as you. Like when I'm reading, like I'd say that, I'd do that. And like and what's funny as well is that her name is Amy for short, but her full name is Amethyst, and that's my birthstone. So
mine too.
Oh, are you Aquarius?
I am.
There's no wonder we get on. Tell you what.
Yeah. So it was a little self-serving naming her Amethyst as well. I was like, it's my favorite birthstone. I'll give her that. But I love all like I can't say like I feel like a parent when they say like I love all of my characters equally, or I love them all the same. I don't love them all the same, but I do have the same amount of love for each of them. But the type of love I have for them is different.
Yeah. I think, and also as well, I think if you can't be a little bit self-serving in your own books, then when can you, right?
Yeah.
All right. So who would you have play Saf and Asher if your books were adapted into film?
Oh, okay. So I actually thought about this because I am the worst at thinking about like celebrities that would play the characters, but I tried to think about this for Saf and Ash. So Saf would be oh gosh, who's Ryan Reynolds' wife?
Blake Lively.
Yeah, Blake Lively. Like her vibe.
Oh, okay.
Like kind of like beachy, kind of
like bohemian
bohemian. And then for Asher, I'm thinking like it's like a young Billy Idol type character.
Nice.
Like a young
looking kind of like, do you know, that's so funny because but with like sorry, I had a bit of a brain jump in my mind. So young Billy Idol and stuff, like always, because the character of Spike from Buffy bases his looks on Billy. Well, actually, according to the Buffy lore, Billy Idol copied his looks from Spike. And everything, but like there were occasions where he reminded me of Spike, just that kind of like Spike when he's not all mournful and stuff, when he's like that kind of slightly cocky, like you said, like the punk rocker kind of thing. So yeah, if we're like gonna throw the clocks back 30 years, we want to basically have James Masters play him.
Oh, there you go. Okay, yeah.
All right, nice. Yeah. I'm down with that.
Nice thing. Yeah.
You have my approval.
So again, a very interesting matchup.
Yeah. Not necessarily one that you would think we're putting together, but here we are. They do. Okay, cool. So last question. If you could recommend your books based off the enjoyment of other books, so like if you like this, then you'll like my books, then which ones would you choose?
So I read mostly indie authors pretty exclusively. So I'll go based off of other indie authors that were very supportive and inspirational in me even taking the leap into writing. So I read a lot of CJ Primer. So she has like her whole like 6-pack series already complete, and she's such a fantastic writer and person. And then Moonlight Muse is another like indie author. She's based in the UK. She's based in England, and
Oh,
she
cool.
has wonderful stories. And in terms of like world building and being like fantastical, like she's tops. Like she's definitely tops with it. So she's definitely someone I'm trying to like chase in terms of my skills in world building. Um, so I'll leave like I'll say those two right now. Like if you've heard of those authors in like the indie world, especially in paranormal romance, like they've definitely been very like influential and inspirational in my journey a lot. So I'll say them. Say those.
Nice. And also nice little shout out for more indie authors,
Yeah,
which
of course,
we love.
yeah.
Oh, nice. I'll definitely have to check them out for sure. You have to DM me their
Oh yeah,
handles.
absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Nice. Cool. So yeah, that is all my questions. That's all our
Okay.
discussions.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, thank you so much. I had a great time, and good, I'm glad. And I guess just like last thing is pimp your stuff. Like, so all the 3 of these books so far are out on Amazon and Kindle Unlimited. So
Yes.
go get them.
Yes.
And yeah, so just if you want to let people know where to find you on social media, if there's anything else that you want to sort of, you know, shout about, or any teasers, anything, this is go for it.
Okay, so I would say I'm on Instagram, so my author handle on Instagram is j.n.stein. So if you're on Instagram, give me a follow. I usually post pretty regularly about upcoming books, upcoming works, and I have a Facebook group called J and Stein's Stories. So you can find it, and we'll provide links for that as well. And then if you are the type of reader who likes to read books as they're being written, I also serialize my books before I put the finished book out on Amazon. So I'm on Ream, REAM. It's like a newer like platform for especially indie authors. It's really great. So you could find me on there, and I will be serializing my 4th book, Finding Fate. That's going to be coming out on Ream probably sometime towards the end of June, early July. And I'll also be putting a short story spinoff exclusively on Ream for the time being, which is based on some of the side characters that we were talking about who just didn't get to have their stories wrapped up or didn't get to have as much spotlight time that we wanted. So I'm going to be focusing on those side characters in a completely spin-off short story novella series that I'm doing called Love 4 series. And it's going to focus on different side characters who we want to see get the love that they deserve in the main books that we didn't get to either finish seeing or didn't get to see at all. So if you love novellas and short stories, you can find those exclusively on Ream. They're going to start serializing this month, but you got to read the first couple books to know who the side characters are and to really appreciate their stories. So that's where I'm getting you.
Yeah. Yeah, put in the work, but the work is fun, so it's not really work at all.
Yeah.
Awesome. Wow, yeah, great. I can't wait for the next one to come out. When is the next one coming out? Do you know?
So Finding Fate, if you're like me and you're a binge reader and you like to wait for the book to be finished because serializing books is just too much torture for you. And I will say, when I serialize my books on Ream, I reserve the right to make edits and changes based on how, like, sometimes I get a different idea as I'm writing it and I might make tweaks and changes. So the finished book for Finding Fate, I'm expecting to have that on Amazon, hopefully by October 2024. So
5 months.
yeah, well, so I'm hoping, like, hopefully no later than then, but I've already started writing it, and if I can maintain the pace I'm going and everything, it should be available in October 2024. If I can only be a full-time writer, but I have a full-time job and I'm in school full-time for my PhD, so I'm somehow balancing all that and finishing this series at the same time. So if you want to help me just become a full-time writer, buy my books, buy my books, and recommend my books to more people.
5 months, like I'm not in your ARC team. Like I'm going to read it before then, but like for anyone else, like long 5 months. But read these books, get on, read the side series.
Yes.
And then hopefully October will come a little bit more quickly for you.
I know. Yeah, it'll be there before we know it, right? It's almost June already.
Yeah, 100%. Cool. Well, yeah, as I said, thank you very, very much. And yeah, so if you want to follow me, I am on TikTok and Instagram under kate.anjou.book.reviews. I'm on, yeah, you should have heard the first couple of episodes. I marked that up so many times. I'm also on Facebook under just Kate Anjou's Book Reviews. You can also email me at kateanjou'sbookreviews@outlook.com. Please like, subscribe, follow, rate, review. All of it really helps, and it's not just helping me, it's helping people like Jen here and so many other authors that I get on the show and promote. The more that you rate and review, the more the word gets spread and these authors get supported, and it's just so important that we support the indie community, because there are some real gems out there, no pun intended. Yeah, so I do implore you, not for me, but for the indie community, you know, just don't call me a hero.
I just wear a cape. Don't call me a hero. I just wear a cape.
I'm really joking. If anyone doesn't know, like, there's a Lonely Island song where they have that whole thing of like, call me a hero, and so that's what that was from. That was not me being facetious or anything. I swear to God, more like that. But yeah, so yeah, and then if you want to, if you're listening and you want to watch, you can find me on YouTube under Kate Anjou's Book Reviews. And if you're watching but you fancy just listening or recommending to people who like to listen to podcasts, then I am found in Spotify, Apple, all your usual places. Just tap me in on Google or wherever, or on your platforms, and you will find me. Next month we are going to be delving into cosmic horror with a friend and indie author of mine. One is not an indie author of mine, he's a friend of mine, and he's also an indie author, called Brian Stammons. So that's going to be really exciting, and I'm very excited to get onto his book. He is a very intelligent writer and has a world of love of everything Lovecraftian and cosmic and horror and spooky stuff. Yeah, he's definitely one to watch. So join me next month for that. And in the meantime, just get on the socials, because I'll be putting updates and everything on there as well, and just general social media content and relatable things and whatnot. So yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye.